Hello again, another Wednesday live. So today's topic is about quietening an overactive mind. And the reason I've picked this is because one of the reasons that we can't make changes to our diet, a lot of people want to eat healthier and exercise more, but actually struggle to do it and to do it consistently. And one of the reasons that we struggle with it is because we don't actually have the mental capacity um, to do that. Okay, so that's why this is quite an important topic for anybody who's struggled with, making consistent changes. Everyone starts with a healthy eating program or regime and then sort of struggles to sort of keep it going. So this is going to help. Okay, so I've made notes as always. So, one of the questions I'll ask to you straight off is, would you recognise this yourself? Do you notice and think that you suffer with having an overactive mind yourself? Okay, I'll I'll own up to having one straight away. And many women do recognise that this is sort of very characteristic of women. And, you know, we laugh about it. We can be quite self-depreciating and just say, oh, it's just one of those things. But in reality, living with this is actually a very stressful and quite a destructive trait to have to live with. And as I said earlier, it really is a barrier between a barrier between being able to create a more consistent and healthier lifestyle. And one of the things, we've always been busy. That's one of the things of having it all, isn't it? You've got your work, home, family, friends, etc. And so you've always had to keep plates spinning, but it goes beyond just being practical things and logical things that we think about, and it actually starts to become something that is a little bit more emotionally driven and a lot more make-believe, basically. Rather than just thinking, oh, I've got to do this by this date, I can't need to recall this person, we actually start to create some quite strange situations in our head, imaginary disaster scenarios, real decision procrastination. We might overthink an event that's coming up and worry about it. It's very common actually with all the news about the economy and prices to start projecting and worrying about the future. And obviously there's a logical aspect to that as well, but you can really let your imagination run riot there and create fear and worry and panic about things that may actually never happen, because we don't necessarily know how to rein our imaginations in, and we can start to dedicate a lot of headspace to worrying about things that haven't happened, that we don't even know will happen for sure. And then, there's always someone in your life that's causing you stress, and we can have a lot of imaginary conversations with people, a boss, a partner, a friend, something that's causing us anxiety, and we play these things on a loop. It's crazy, it goes on and on. And, when we don't really realise we're doing this, we sort of slip into this pattern, but it can actually lead to, real serious levels of feeling overwhelmed, and when you've got so much going on in your head, so much noise, you can feel very confused. You don't know whether you're coming or going. And, certainly at this time in a lot of our lives, we feel that this is a time where we want things to change, or we need things to change. And if we've got so much going round in our head all the time, you can actually start to feel very stuck or trapped in your life and unable to see your way out or understand how you might be able to change things. And that becomes another source of anxiety, because you want to change, you have to change, or you want to do different things, and you're stuck, you can't move forwards. Okay, and can't do anything. I'm talking about people in their sort of 50s without putting the M word in there. But menopause actually exacerbates this. Menopause symptoms are a source of stress in their own right. If you don't have a good night's sleep, or you're tired, you're low in energy, or your mood's taken dropped, then getting through the day feels harder still. And, dealing with stress is harder during menopause. That's known. So, but when you feel like everything's getting on top of you, or you've not had a good sleep and everything's conspiring against you, very rarely do you have the chance to just miss out on the day. You have to force yourself through it. And that forcing yourself through the day to get everything done, with the brain that's maybe not firing on all cylinders, is absolutely really taxing. And people can find themselves in that mode day in, day out, really tough. Okay, so, if it's tough just to keep your normal life together, how on earth then do you part of what you want to change is eating healthier food, which means more work. Yes, you've got to chop it up. Going out for a run or whatever exercise. I'm not necessarily a fan of running, but doing exercise, get activity, burning energy, getting sweaty, getting hot, getting out of breath, all of those things. When you really feel like strung out after a tough day, neither of those things are appealing at all. We only have so much mental capacity. Being really stressed in our brains all day actually can reduce your physical energy as well. So you can see, hopefully, when you think about it like this, that this is why change can be so different. We can't manage it. We don't have the mental capacity. We don't have the physical and mental energy to do it. And therefore, this noise, this crazy stress in our brain becomes a barrier to change. And, I have read figures about this, or data that suggests that the majority of what we think about is useless. And ironically, I can't remember the exact figure, but it's 70, 75, 80%. So the majority, a big majority of what we think about is actually useless. And when I read that as a number, and if you think of this head here, 3/4 of what's going on in there is actually of no use to me practically. It's actually quite a sobering thought, and imagine if you could just turn a switch and for that to go, all that nonsense, imagine how that would feel. If suddenly that noise, that background noise, those imaginary conversations or arguments that you might have, or defensiveness or criticisms of yourself, just literally were silenced, how do you think that would make your brain feel? It would be a lot nicer place to be in, and you could almost, even as I'm saying this, I can almost imagine the lightness of your head. You would feel a lot lighter. You would feel a lot calmer. You would feel a lot more peaceful. You'd actually be a lot more in a lot more control of your life as well. And all that sounds really appealing, doesn't it, when you think about it like that? And so you can actually learn how to turn off this noise in your head. And when you do that, because you're sort of getting rid of this 75% of these nonsense thoughts, suddenly you've got a huge amount of mental capacity that you can use, and it's really life-changing when you can actually get to that, because suddenly things that you can think more clearly, you don't feel overwhelmed, you can be a lot more decisive about what you want to do, you can have clarity about where you're trying to get to, and you can start to make decisions and moving forwards. That mental energy that you free up when you get rid of all this nonsense suddenly translates into more motivation to do things that would be part of the change that you want to make, going for a walk, cooking a healthy dinner, or even just simply the motivation to say, no, I'm not going to have a takeaway or slam a pizza in the oven, I'm going to do something else. So that motivation is a lot, it sort of is freed up. And that's when you can see how the relationship between a busy mind holding you back and a free mind being a really powerful tool that you can then use to move yourself forwards. Okay, $1 million question. So how do you actually achieve this wonderful, calm, controlled state of mind? I'm not going to say it's easy, am I? Okay, but the first one is, it's not always as hard as you think, actually, and it depends on your attitude towards it. You can start to do this in a very gradual way, because the first step would be to learn to recognise the nonsense, the useless stuff that's going on in there from the useful, okay? That it's in itself can be enough to start you to sort of get quieting down the sort of noise. And one of the things that I've learned or come across quite recently, which I found quite helpful, was an idea of labelling all the nonsense as your ego mind. Okay, and having a little label or a little picture can actually be quite helpful, because you can start to, as you notice your thought patterns, you can start to attach it to this other identity, and it just makes it easy for you to start to separate the good stuff from the bad stuff. Okay, so I'm going to use this ego mind because for me it just helped, and I think it will help in this as well. So the task then is to start distinguishing this ego mind from the real you, and this ego mind only lives in your head. It's the nonsense that goes round and round and round. It's not aware of anything outside of it. And you can, I quite often go for a walk, and I might walk down the street, and I'll get, 20 minutes down the road, and I don't actually know if I've walked past anyone. I could have tripped up. I literally feel like I've had my eyes shut, because you're so much in your own head, you have no awareness of what's going on around you at all, to the point you just can't even remember doing things. And that's a good example of how absorbed we can be in that, and how we can really lose touch about what's really going on around us. So I'm going to just give you a few different ways that you can actually recognise and label these ego thoughts, or these thoughts coming from the ego mind. Okay, and one really helpful one is when the mental chatter, what you're hearing, makes you a victim. Okay, so you might be thinking, why is everything so difficult? Why can't I work this out? Why does my boss put so much pressure on me? Why can't I control my eating? Why is my motivation rubbish? You're actually doing things that are almost feeling sorry for yourself, that you're a victim of some sort of circumstances, the busyness of your life, which means you can't do something. Okay, that's a victim thinking. Another label, or another sort of characteristic, is negative comparisons. Okay, so you might be thinking, I'm not as successful as other people, or I'm more boring, or less attractive, or haven't got the same, willpower. You could be looking at things that suggest like low self-esteem. You don't deserve it. You're not good enough. You'll never make this work. You always get bad luck. So these negative things are very common, actually, because we live so much of our lives looking at social media. We see the best bits of everyone else's life, and it's very easy to fall into that comparison pattern. I see this a lot with younger people as well, like teenagers who spend an awful lot of time on the phones and looking at stuff. So this is very characteristic of ego mind, that those negative comparisons and this low self-esteem, that you're not as good as other people. So that's one to watch out for. Other ego mind thoughts are thoughts that are rooted in either control or fear. Okay, so you might feel that you have to really work hard all the time because you're frightened that you'll get the imposter syndrome is a good one, or you're frightened that someone's going to be better than you at work, or you're going to lose your job and not have enough money, and you can't settle, or you can't rest for a minute because you always have to be going at this thing because of the fear. Control is one where you might be micromanaging people in your life. Right, smile, women can be terrible for this. You're trying to control everything. You're making sure everyone in your life is doing what they're supposed to be doing to the right standard and not forgetting it. This can be very common for women running a household. You might have support from your partner, but you're having to make sure that they've remembered to do the things that they're supposed to do, and then you might be checking that they've done it properly. But that can really go crazy, because you're not really outsourcing any work from yourself, and this can happen at work, as in an office environment, because you'll make micromanaging everybody, and you might as well be doing 10 people's different jobs because you're supervising every aspect of it and checking on it all. And that can be done as a mental thing as well. And then confrontations, you might be having confrontations of people because you're worried about what they think about you, or worried that they've got a negative opinion of you. So these controlling, frightening thoughts that can go around in your head all belong to this sort of ego mind, this sort of alter ego. And these voices, when you sort of start to tune in and pay attention to your brain and how it works and how it sounds, another way of differentiating this from you is the noise, because they can be very loud, shouty thoughts that pop into your head. You might be thinking, well, I might see if that girl wants to go out for coffee, and straight away, she probably doesn't want to, or she'll probably say no. It's an instant thing that comes in that's making you sort of worry or be negative that she's probably too busy, as in not got time for you, that type of thing. So whereas thoughts that come from yourself tend to be a lot quieter. Okay. So recognising and starting to just observe and pay attention to the thoughts that come up in your mind is quite interesting. And I must say, I haven't got a quiet, perfect sort of on mind myself. So just for transparency, this is a work in progress for me, and probably always will be for the rest of your life. But it is very useful to then start to recognise when you're in that thought pattern or in that loop, because it's a bit like calling out a bully at school or in the office. Once you sort of spot it, it sort of goes, and you start to, oh yeah, that's that ego mind, and again, that's where that little identity comes in very handy, because you can just very easily identify it and pin a label on it, and you start to get that separation. And, even just by being aware of it, it just turns that voice down, and then you can start to become a little bit less stressed, less anxiety, and start to think, right, okay, take a couple of deep breaths. What is it that I need to do now or think about? So if the first step is to recognise and start to sift through the difference, the second step would be, there are some activities that you can do as well that can actually help you calm your mind down and quieten it. So I'll just talk about those as well. So meditation is one. A lot of people think about meditation as being something that you have to be able to sit there and not think for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is. That can put people off just for the fact that you probably don't even think you can get close to probably 30 seconds without thinking. But meditation isn't only about that. And meditation, or some meditations, can be just about being sat there and observing those thoughts that come up in your mind. And a nice example is the idea that they're like balloons. So that thought might come up as a little balloon, and then you think, oh yeah, I'm thinking about that, then let it go, and the next one comes up and you think about it and it goes. So you're not following the thoughts, you're just noticing the different things that pop up, and that's sort of building your awareness. So that's a type of meditation that you can do that actually helps to sort of bring your awareness into this negative way of thinking and how you think. Other types of meditation, like say a guided meditation, or anything that you can do like a hobby or an activity that just really does allow your brain to forget all the nonsense and concentrate on something for a period of time, is useful, because that allows you just to have a break. When I'm training people, some people just love it so much because they'll come into the little gym and all we'll talk about for that hour is their technique or how heavy the weights are that they're lifting, and they'll get to the end and they'll say, oh, I've just forgotten about the rest of my life. And you're so used to sort of being in this loop of all this nonsense going on that you're carrying around with you all the time. You can step into an environment or do an activity that actually stops all that and allows you to be really absorbed in something else, and it can feel really nice, once you recognise it. I remember swimming a few years ago, and that really did it for me, and it was lovely. I didn't think about anything else, and you come away from that and you feel like you've had a real rest. Another thing that I'm a big fan of is journaling, and that can be a very useful tool to help you identify your own patterns. I've given examples here, but yeah, everyone will have their own little patterns, and actually starting to identify your own little patterns as they crop up is very interesting. And journaling can be a good way of doing that, and then it makes it easier for you to spot them when they come up. And then the third step is to get out of your head by shifting from thinking to doing. So quite often we can feel a little bit paralysed. You might be on automatic pilot doing all the things that you have to do. We can be reacting to friends, family, jobs, partners, and never feel like we're actually having to make a decision to do something for ourselves. And I think this is especially pertinent for women, in the 50s, who are starting to look a little bit beyond what's the next stage of their life going to be. And that idea has so many options, because really you could do anything, and there's lots about in the future that you don't know about. So it can feel very difficult to move forwards. And this can be part of this very sort of busy cycle of just overwhelm and sort of analysis paralysis almost. So if you start to stop thinking about things and just do stuff, then that can be a good way, because the ego mind is just in your head. it's never doing anything. It's just procrastinating, doing a risk analysis of certain things, worrying whether you'll like it, whether it's a waste of time, whether you can afford it, whether people will like you, or, you know, all of these crazy things. If you just actually go out and do something, then that can actually be a way to start to feel like you're breaking out of your head. Okay. And again, if you're at a point in your life where you're looking at sort of making changes, whatever they are, you know, even let's just use an exercise routine, for example. You know, sometimes just do things that you feel drawn to for the sake of it. People can go into thinking they have to exercise, that they're going to go to the gym once, and then suddenly that on the back of that one visit, there's got to be a 3 times a week gym routine for the rest of their life. Whoa, you know, how about you just go once and see if you like it first? You know, so it's about just taking baby steps, trying things out, not overthinking it, and really just considering yourself in a bit of an experimental phase, and just allowing yourself to do things without creating attachments to them. Okay. So, you know, if you wanted to create an exercise routine, then you just, let's say you just go and try a few different things and see what you like, and not have any expectations that everything that you do is going to be the right thing, the one thing that you've been waiting for all your life. If you don't like it, you won't have to do it again. If you do like it and you want to do it again, knock yourself out. You know, that's all it has to be. So it's taking away that attachment. And so it's not only just doing things and doing activities, which is important, because I think getting outside and getting to be with other people can really help to sort of switch off the noise in your head. But also practice making small choices too, because we can, after years of looking after family and, you know, just almost being on call to anyone and everything in your life, you never actually, you get out of touch with being proactive and being able to think for yourself. So part of that getting out of your head is also learning to quieten down the ego thinking, yeah, and be able to tune into you. What do you want? You know, how many times does your partner say, "Where do you fancy going out for a meal? What do you fancy?" And you'll say, "Well, what do you like?" And you don't even make a choice. You know, you can't even think, well, where would my favourite restaurant be and what would I want? You know, you're so used to going with the flow and putting everyone else first, you actually don't know what you want anymore. So once you've quietened this voice down, you're trying to then learn to tune back into yourself and saying, well, what do I like? You know, what do I want? What do I feel like today? You know, what do I need? And actually starting to almost rediscover that part of yourself, because it's there. We've just probably spent, like 30 years ignoring it. Or however long it is that you've been married and had kids and had a job with people sort of needing you all the time. So, you know, that can be a big thing to actually learn to do that. And that can feel really empowering, just to say, to be the one who makes the choice and makes the decision and does the thing, you know, that they want. You know, now and again, that can feel really nice. So when you sort of get into the point when you're sort of quietening this ego mind, another thing to be thinking of is, and I think this is I can't remember the book that I read this from. I can't remember, but it's such a brilliant concept. The idea that you're not just a head, you're a whole body. And when you're thinking, it's like when I said about walking down the street and I can't even remember what I've walked past or whether I've stood in anything or, walked over something. I literally was only in my head. I had no idea what was going on around me. And actually starting to remember that you are a body, you know, you've got millions, billions of cells, miles and miles of veins blood pumping around your body. You've got loads of sensors in your feet. You're in contact with the environment. Your body's continually responding and adjusting to the environment that we're in at. You know, the temperature, the feel of the ground beneath you to sort of keep you in balance. And we forget all of that, you know, because we're just locked in this brain, you know, this mind stuff. Whereas when if you can then start to focus on your body and how you're feeling and that you as a whole person with arms and legs is sat in life, that can also then take you out of your mind. Okay. So for example, now I could be concentrating on the feel of my shirt or the noise of my bracelets jangling or my bum sat on a hard stool and my feet on the floor. When you start to think about how the whole of you, then that can actually start to quieten that mind as well. And being more, we talk about being present and able to experience things in the moment. You know, sometimes we can hear these things too much and we don't really take time to think about what that actually really means. But it is really about seeing things as they are and being aware of everything that they are, you as a whole person and the environment that you're in, and seeing it in really rich detail, using all your senses. I can feel that my hands are a bit cold because I've not, like the rest of the country, not had the heating on. Toughing it up. As soon as this is over, I'm going to put a big jumper on. I can start to feel the cold air on my hands, and I can hear the traffic out the window. You're starting to really try and think about everything, and in doing that, you get out of your own head. Okay, and that can be really powerful. And then you learn to allow that. If you were sort of sat in your garden having a cup of tea for a minute, the rest of your life isn't going to collapse or implode just because you're having that time in the moment. And it's learning to trust that that's okay and give yourself permission to do that, rather than that fear dominating your thinking and feeling that you always have to be thinking or anticipating or disaster planning or waiting for something to happen so you're ready to respond. You don't have to be. You're learning just to sort of take little moments out for yourself and do nothing and learn to be okay with that and let go. Okay, because when you start to sort of practice a few things, I've talked a lot about the ego, but I suppose if I just talk a little bit before we finish about what your real you is, you would be someone who actually has intuition, and that's not a spiritual hocus pocusy thing. We have got a lot of senses in our body that allow us to take information from the surroundings and make judgment. But it's not that crazy mind, that illogical, irrational, fearful thinking. So you can think of it as being led by your heart or your gut feel. That's a real old saying, because we have, we can feel what's the right thing. So we're trying to go for what we feel rather than what we think. Okay, and that idea of being able to relax and trust all the time, trust that everything's going to be okay, trust that you're doing enough, trust that you know your stuff, and you're conscientious and diligent enough with your life that nothing crazy is gonna happen. And I think that's where this concept of surrender comes in. And again, that's a really American term that it feels a little bit overused, surrender, and I don't like it. But when I've thought about it, it is just about being relaxed. Yeah, being relaxed, trusting that everything's going to be okay, knowing that you're doing enough, but it's okay to do nothing for this moment. And also being open to what's going on around you as well, and just allowing yourself to feel and react and respond to things, and to just accept what happens to you and know that you'll be okay and you'll find a way through it. Okay. And so this is all a part of the process of just quietening that mind, really starting to be able to trust and tune into what you want, because when you get to that point, that's when you're going to be able to start making more conscious decisions, because you've got rid of all that noise about what you want. And that's when you can make more conscious decisions about, I'm talking here a lot about health. This thinking would apply to someone who wants a career change or make any other big change in their life. It would be the same. But I suppose my area is sort of health and fitness. Once you've got rid of this noise in your brain, wherever it comes from, you've got more capacity then to make decisions that you want to improve your health, and have the headspace and the energy to then pursue that and go after that. Okay. And not be in the roller coaster of emotions, mood, noise in your head that dictates how you live your life. One last thing, because again, just in the context of food, you can also, how you feel or your ego mind can affect how you eat. Okay. And a lot of people can find it very helpful once they decide they want to have a healthier diet, to stop thinking about calories and start thinking about food as nourishment. Okay, something that you're giving to yourself because you need, and just dropping this whole calorie control thing that people have been on for forever. That's really awful and really restrictive. Okay, and you start to see food as nourishment and nutrition that can make you feel a lot better. Okay, but people want to have nice food as well. You want to have birthday cake, you want to have Christmas cake, or chocolates now and again. So how do you then allow yourself to give yourself nourishing food, but also make a little bit of space in your life for whatever your favourite thing is, chocolate cake, cheesecake, whatever it is. Okay, and one of the things to watch out for with that is sometimes, or very often, everyone knows what they should be eating, okay? you just sort of struggle to not eat it, or you struggle to eat it consistently. And the ego brain can actually start to create food usage patterns as well. So, for example, you might use food as a punishment or as compensation for being a victim. I've had a terrible day, everything's gone wrong, I'm going to sit on the sofa and eat a tub of ice cream. That's not you deciding that you want some ice cream just for the sheer pleasure of it, as a treat. That's you being driven by your ego to use food as compensation for this negativity that you're building up in your own mind, okay? You might sort of have gone out for a nice meal, overeaten on a Friday, and then next Saturday morning, you're frustrated, you're beating yourself up for your lack of self-control, and then you just go straight and have a whole day where you're just eating anything that moves, okay? Or you're eating a chocolate bar because you're bored, you're restless, you're frustrated, you don't know what to do with yourself. These are all ways that you can actually then start to use food as part of that negative thinking cycle, and you're not really eating because you just decide, hey, it's a nice day, I'm going to go and have a coffee and I'm going to enjoy a slice of cake with that and have a chat with my friend. That's lovely, that's really nice. That's something that people can do now and again, no problem to the health or their diet or the weight or whatever it is that's driving them. But as soon as you sort of allow yourself to slip into the mode that as a victim, as self-punishment, as compensation, you then having all these foods just to make yourself feel better because your life's so bad, then you're going to be doing that all the time, and that becomes a very negative cycle of eating, and that can really sort of take over and be something that a couple of pieces of cake once a week, a couple of times a week is going to make no difference to anybody. But if you're falling into a regular routine and a pattern of eating these things maybe several times a day, every month, every year, then that's when you actually start to creating a problematic relationship with food. And in that example, it's coming from this out of control brain. Okay, so just wanted to put that in just as some context to sort of take it back into food. That's me for today. I've gone a little bit over my half an hour because I can talk. Okay, right. Well, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you all go on to have a very nice day. And I'll see you again next week because I'll be doing this again every Wednesday. All right, bye now.